Hello and welcome to the Expat Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Annie.
And I'm your host, Steve.
And in this podcast, we're going to explore the reality of living life as an expat in Australia and what it really means to feel like you belong.
Join us as we uncover the challenges and opportunities that expat life presents on the search for settled.
With our stories, tips and interviews, see us as your two friends to help you navigate expat life abroad. Just to let you know, this video podcast series is brought to you by the team at Auric Migration and Mobility. Now, Auric have helped us personally with my visa process to Australia, and we only know too well how difficult the entire process can be if you're doing it by yourself. They have also helped hundreds of our followers, and they're offering our listeners an initial assessment for free. Email them your visa situation, questions or concerns, and they will get back to you at no extra cost. Simply mention the Expat Reality Podcast when you email them at migration@auric.com. Auric is spelled A-U-R-E-C. So that's migration@auric.com. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Expat Reality Podcast. I'm Annie.
And I'm Steve.
And we're going to be sharing today everything we've been up to over the last couple of months because so much has happened, hasn't it, Steve?
Oh, yeah. Like we've been struck with COVID. We've got married before that.
Like
and
everybody,
then
married.
Check it out.
If you're watching online at the moment, see we're showing our engagement wedding ring fingers. So it's very exciting.
How did that happen? I don't know. We just got married. Just did it.
We just did it. Yeah. Went on honeymoon. Also, I know you're all going to be very surprised, but I also turned 40, which in itself is bizarre. So I'm going to be talking lots about the wedding process, why we got married in a month. We literally planned it all in a month, which was a bit too crazy.
I'd probably advise against that. If you had time to plan it, we'll dive into that deeper, but plan it. Just plan it.
We're also going to talk about some tips for expats who are marrying Australians as well. You know, the sort of questions that might pop up before you get married, as in, where are we going to live? Are we going to live in my country or are we going to live in your country?
Totally.
Which one's it going to be?
It's a question you might want to ask because if you're going to get married, well, then you kind of got two places to choose from. So.
Yeah. So all those sort of important questions that you're probably going to need to uncover before you get married are super important. We're going to talk more about that today as well. So yeah, so much to cover. Can't wait to get into it. So I think we should probably start by talking about, we got engaged in 2018. So there's been 4 years we've been waiting to get married, which is a long time for a lot of people. Obviously, we couldn't use COVID as our excuse for not getting married, but what do you think, Steve? Why did we wait so long?
Why did we wait so long? I don't know. Honestly, you know what? Actually, I'll give you the real reason. The reason we waited was because we're kind of afraid of it wasn't going to live up to our expectations.
Oh my God, you're so right.
That was what it was. And you kind of, look, since I'm sure Annie's the same, it's probably more so for females and males, but they have this thing inside your mind, you're thinking, oh, this day's going to be big. It's going to be all the friends are going to be there and wild parties, people getting flung around in, blankets and chairs and all kind of, maybe not that big, but anyway, big things are going to happen that day, and it kind of, so it puts a lot of pressure on you. And when it kind of doesn't feel like it's unraveling in that direction, then you kind of wonder.
Exactly. And I think Steve's completely right in a sense. We both just kind of put it off because, a lot of our friends are based around the world from a lot of travels that we've done. And we logistically knew it was going to be really hard for many people to come. You've got a really good point there, Steve, because we did put it off for a long time because, we were really sort of worried it was going to be a bit of a letdown really to what we actually really wanted. Do you remember? And so when we came back to Australia in 2019, so this is a year after we got engaged, we went, it wasn't 2019, it was 2020 after we could sort of travel again from COVID. And we were down in Sydney. We found a ring designer to make my engagement ring and my wedding ring as well, who's called Bert Jewellery, who I've written about before. She is amazing.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She's from Wales. It's not really, wasn't meant to be a plug about her, but I'm going to do it anyway. She's from Wales. And the reason why I picked her is because she makes engagement rings that really tell a story. So, and I really love that about her. And I found her on Instagram. And that's the reason why we kind of went down to Sydney after the after the borders open again to get my engagement ring designed. Now, the reason why Steve didn't buy me one is because he proposed to me while we were traveling.
So I kind of had a bit of a stand-in ring. So, you know, I proposed it in New York, in Central Park on the little lake there.
On the rowing boat.
And we'd been like all over the place. And I was like, I don't want to carry a big expensive ring. So I kind of bought this stand-in ring, right? So, you know, the big moment happened and we got pictures and everything. These girls in the boat and they're cruising, let's have a look at the ring. And there's like this, you know, cheapo, like $100 ring I just bought as a stand-in. And they kind of went, oh.
I know, they did, didn't they? And then the ring was too big. Actually,
it looked pretty like average.
It gave me, like, I think I was allergic to it. I don't know where you
You're
got
actually
it from.
allergic. I mean, that's not a good way to start. You know, like thinking about like an allergic ring, maybe a sign. I don't know,
Oh my God.
but you know, probably not there. Not there.
Just to sort of mention as well, where we were staying at that time when you
Oh,
proposed to
you
me.
got to tell that story.
So we booked this Airbnb in Brooklyn. It was. And we stayed in Airbnbs all over the shop. This is probably before. I know Airbnbs, like not many people. We're definitely not really doing Airbnbs much anymore. But like
my Airbnb experience.
But that experience was the worst I've ever stayed in. And I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it was literally like a scene from Coming to America. If you have not seen that movie, it's about the Prince of Zamunda, a made-up country in Africa where he comes to America to find his queen, and they end up living in Queens in New York, thinking it's going to be full of queens, and in actual fact, they say like this proper dive. That's kind of a bit similar to what we
and
stayed.
It wasn't cheap either. And it was like we didn't have much like option left. It was a busy time of the year, and the rooms were going for like $300 or $400 a night. And we're like, do we really want to spend that much?
No, but the thing is we're only in New York for like 5 days.
That's a cheap rent.
And you know, after the first night, we were like, oh my God, we need to get out of here. But we didn't really have any other option because the hotels at that time, this was in the middle of summer, were really expensive. And we didn't have the money to pay for it. I didn't know Steve was going to propose. And
neither did I. Well, I kind of did. I kind of knew. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it or when, but I thought that was a good moment. Why not?
And yeah, so anyway, but we look back at it with pure sort of laughter, don't we?
Let's just set the scene where we were staying anyway. So we got there and the guy's like, you know, we've opened the door and it feels like you're already in like this student house, like it's a flat share affair and it just feels a bit off.
It wasn't, no, but the thing is, we only had one bedroom in the whole flat.
There was only one. Well, no, there was another bedroom with another guy.
There was.
There was a second bedroom with some random Romanian guy staying in there.
Yeah, but the guy who run the Airbnb was living in the flat, but we were sleeping in his bedroom and he would sleep out in the living room,
which you couch.
Would have to walk past once you walk through the door to get into the bedroom. And we thought he was actually sleeping in our room when we were out.
Yeah.
So I like strategically placed stuff on the bed and took a photo on my phone so I could like check when we got back, see if everything is still in the same place. But it was proper disgusting, and the bathroom was the worst I've ever seen in my life. Like
there's like different, like, you know, how would you say, generations of mold on the shower curtain. So there's like pink and there's a bit of blue and green. That was like seriously, it was like an ecosystem, and that was the like not so bad part. So, the cockroaches crawling along the floor, and then he'd obviously tried to like mop it with a manky hair mop, and there's like bits of long hair around the floor. It was nasty.
You know what everyone's going to be thinking right now who's listening to this? They're going to think, you knew you were going to propose to her, and yet you
I didn't know when. Let me just clear that up. I didn't know when exactly, but I thought, you know, and it was quite awkward because this was like the perfect moment, yet I knew in the evening we were going back to an absolute cesspool.
Oh, but you know what? That
really
night
hard.
was amazing. And you know, Steve proposed on the rowing boat in New York, and then we went out to the little rowing boat sort of restaurant. I don't know what it was, like in Central Park after, and we had some champagne, and then we went up the top of the Empire State Building, and the guy at the front of the Empire State Building, he was like, he let's go up, like we don't have to queue, because I went to the bathroom and Steve like told him that we just got engaged, and he was like, oh, I'm going to send you guys straight up to the top so you don't have to line up, and we're like, wow, that's so cool.
Little tip, maybe just pretend you got engaged and you're going to sneak your way up.
and then afterwards we went out to literally went to one of those like corner sort of pizza slice shops, and we had like $2 pizza. But it was just like the most perfect night, and it was beautiful. But we're totally digressing here about why we waited.
Anyway,
so
back to this guy's nasty apartment in Brooklyn. So we were there, and Annie was right. She's taking pictures of this guy's in. He's going to be in my bag. Like, I know it. Anyway, so I had a sense that all wasn't well here, and because when we arrived, it's do you guys want a beer? And then he disappeared, and he came back with one beer for the three of us. And I'm like, that's a bit weird. And then he's like sloppily pouring, and he's always like, he's coming off something, and I'm like, oh, this is not a good scene. And he's divvying out the one beer into these manky cups. He's going, oh, here, have a good time. Cheers, thanks for staying with me. And I'm like, oh no. Anyway, the best bit, I love this bit. He wanted to sell us sheets of toilet paper. Who does that? Who sells sheets of toilet paper? Like that? I mean, come on. He wouldn't even sell a whole roll. He would just sell sheets. Oh, that's so good. God. So if there's ever, the kind of opportunist in me that comes out, no, let's sell them sheets. Don't sell them the whole thing. Anyway, so that just didn't really gel. So
I think everyone's probably going to be wondering, what did your wedding look like if that's what your engagement looked like? But just going back to it, so once the borders opened in 2020 with the, because of COVID, we went down to Sydney and we got the engagement ring designed up, which was amazing because actually on the ring, if you're watching this online, you'll be able to see.
Oh, that's your one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my one. And anyway, so there's a sapphire, a big sort of kite-shaped sapphire, but we've got diamonds around it. But the diamond on the bottom is actually from Steve's mum's engagement ring. So it's really cool that we've got a part of Steve's mum and dad on this engagement ring, which is a really beautiful touch. But what was funny about that visit to Sydney is that we ended up going to Mount Wilson, which is one of my favorite places near Sydney. If you've not been to Mount Wilson, oh my God, it's absolutely gorgeous, especially if you're British as well, because it really reminds me of the English countryside, where it's just this beautiful pocket of the Blue Mountains that has like amazing gardens that you can go and visit during spring or during autumn, and they're usually only open during those times of year. Quite a few movies were filmed there, like The Great Gatsby with Leonardo DiCaprio, and was it Michelle Williams was in it as well. They filmed all along there as well, and it's so beautiful. And I said to Steve, I was like, let's get married in Mount Wilson. How amazing would that be? And we went to have a look at a property during that visit to see about getting married. And both of us were like, wow, this is amazing. But it was so stupidly extravagant for what we would ever do. And it was really beautiful. And they were like, oh, the guests stay in all these rooms. And we were like, wow, this sounds like absolutely amazing. But because, we were paying for the wedding ourselves, we were like, how much is this wedding really going to cost? And in your head, you think, oh, well, I'll just pay for the venue. And that pretty much covers everything. But it totally.
Oh, the venue is just where the conversation starts.
Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of looked at that as we were like, oh, that's a dream fantasy right there. And obviously that's never going to happen for us. But then, time went on and we just kind of like pushed it to a side, didn't we? And, over the next year or two, there was more lockdowns kept happening and we were like, oh gosh, I just don't even want to face this. And then, it got to the point where in September this year, in 2022, we were like, right, we're going to do it. We're going to get married. And one of the main reasons, there's two sort of main reasons we want to get married. One is because we were at a stage where we were like, we just need to get on and do it, which I know it doesn't sound very romantic.
Just do it. Come on.
We just need to get on and do it. It's been on our list for so long. We're like, we need to hurry up and do it.
What? Like it had been dangling for 10 years.
11 years.
11 years. 11 years, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so it had been, on the cards for that long. And you're like, well, we should be, look, too much time has passed here. We need to get on with this.
One of the main reasons actually that we decided to get married, especially within a month, is because we were applying for adoption. And if you didn't know already, I have talked about this a few times on my Instagram channel, but I haven't gone into depth about it until actually really recently. But yeah, I found out I couldn't have children. And it's been going on for 5 years, I think. Yeah. So in 2017, my best friend in Sydney, she got pregnant and she said, hey, you should go and get yourself checked out, make sure you're okay, to have children. And I was 34 at the time thinking, yeah, why wouldn't I be? It should be fine. We're going to start in the next couple of years. And it should all be great. And when I saw the doctor was like, well, actually, your egg count is really low and you should go and see a specialist. And I was like, what? Like, excuse me? But we were about to go traveling for a year. And so we were like, well, we'll deal with this at another time because we want to concentrate on traveling. And also I didn't really want to sort of have to face up to that possibility. Then, do you remember when we were in India and we were in McLeod-Ganj, which is a northern part of India in the Himalayas, which is actually where we originally met. And I remember getting all these sort of menopausal symptoms.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, actually, since I've known you, you probably had those.
Probably.
So, yeah, I mean, that kind of, you don't know that until later on, but now that you say that.
Well, when we were in like a cold part of India and I kept getting these like real hot flushes and I was like, oh my God, what's going on with me? I didn't quite understand it. And I said to Steve, I went, oh my God, what if I'm going through the menopause? And he was like, don't be so silly, as if at your age. So when we got to England that year, I went to the doctors a lot because I was having like irregular periods and they've said, we don't know what's wrong with you. You can't be going through menopause. You're too young because you're not supposed to go through it until you're like early 50s. And so anyway, fast forward a few years, went to see lots of doctors and it got to a point at the beginning of 2021, which was when we were eventually told, you got to stop even considering, having a child naturally because it's just not going to happen for you. And so like we've spent like the last 2 years really sort of, dealing with my crazy menopausal symptoms, which makes me sort of go, I can't believe Steve's still with me, which just to talk to you about.
Well, I'm not, how can I say, like, I'm a patient guy, she's a pretty cool chick though as well. So that does kind of help, like.
But I was like so crazy, like had to rage big time. I would just scream.
Okay. First of all, when I think menopause, I think, Mrs. Doubtfire and kind of that thing. Because that's kind of
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. Because I'm having hot flushes. That's what she says. And like, he says it, he, she, whatever. So anyway, so then I think of Mrs. Doubtfire. She says she's having hot flushes. She's like, she's grandma size, that sort of thing. So it's not the sort of thing you think of. It would happen to someone younger, but it does. And this is the thing that happens. So, and it's, I think the hardest thing to deal with, I think, as a male, as a partner, is just sort of that, challenging moments when they fly off the handle at anything and everything's like so emotionally charged and there's, it's big, high stakes. Everything's high stakes. And it's a lot to deal with. It's very challenging, I can say, as a partner. But that's it. If you really love and care for someone, you stick with them and, you just weather the storm. So,
and I think that's the thing. Like now there is more people talking about it. But like, when I was told, you're going through the menopause at like 37 or whatever it was like, oh, okay. And then they were like, we're going to give you HRT, which is really lucky because like I know there's quite a few countries where they won't give it to you. And they were like, here's your HRT prescription, on you go. And I had to call them back and I was like, well, I don't know how to take it. Like, what do I do? Which is really bad. And it took me like, I had to get the prescription changed like 4 times before it actually worked for me properly. And that took a lot of like tolerance from the doctors who kept pushing back on me. And all they would say to me is, maybe you should give you antidepressants. And I was like, I don't need them. I just need you to sort out my script.
Like they would just go, oh, look, here's some pills, go and take them. And I'm like, well, it's not really something that, taking a few antidepressants are going to really make any sort of significant impact here. This is something that's more
hormonal. It's so mad.
It's deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I held off doing that. And once all I needed to do was up my estrogen. And once they did that, absolutely fine now. So I'm not schizo or crazy anymore.
Much, much more pleasant to deal with.
That's why you married me in the end.
maybe if you kind of, the other half's been a bit funny, just, slip down the chemist and grab a few of those estrogen pills and away you go,
So to cut a long-winded story short there, so in the last like 6 months or so, we thought, right, okay, let's start applying for this adoption process and see what it looks like. And it turns out in Australia, it's actually really, really hard.
Crazy hard.
Crazy hard. It's kind of hard to find out any information about it as well. Being government websites, always really, really difficult to find out.
Oh yeah, they're happy to give you a lot of information that probably isn't really pertaining to what you're actually asking. Load of legal stuff. So it's like, it's difficult.
It's really hard. And, we found out that adoption in Australia, especially in Queensland, because it's different for each state, but in Queensland, I think last year, like 6 children were adopted in the whole state. And that's because in Australia, they put a lot of kids in foster care. And so that's how the sort of system works. So for us, we were sort of really interested in doing inter-country adoption, which basically means adopting from another country. So we've traveled a lot around the world. And so some of the requirements for inter-country adoption, you have to be married for at least a year. So when we originally applied, they were like, yeah, just apply because the process is like 5 years long. And we were like, okay. And then we found out recently, they were like, oh, we actually won't look at your application until you've been married for at least a year. So we were like, oh, okay. So that's when we're like, okay, well, let's just get on and do it and get married, and then we can get that process started. So that's really the main reason why we wanted to get married. So, we can talk more about that adoption process the further we get into it. But at the moment, we're at the very early stages of it. I do have a blog post on our site about the sort of effects of infertility, which I have written like recently. So I'll link that in the description for this podcast if you fancy having a read. But yeah, we'll talk about next, like what it's actually like organizing a wedding in a month.
Can I just say, like, honestly, a month is not long enough to plan a wedding.
I think that's why no one does that in a month.
Everyone we spoke to just went, what year are you getting married? Like, next month. They looked at us like, what? They're crazy.
So the reason why we did it in a month is because that's the shortest time you can actually sort of prepare to get married in Australia. So you have to like apply for a intent to marry form, I think it's called.
Which is weird because, in Vegas, and I did suggest this to Annie at the time because we wanted to get married. Well, I wanted to get married with Elvis. I don't know how Annie felt about that.
Hang on, let's backtrack there. When we went to Vegas, that was probably about a week before we went to New York when you proposed. So if you proposed before we got to Vegas, then
my timing was off.
Story.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. All right, that works.
Because we went to the little white wedding chapel where Britney got married, and J-Lo and Ben Affleck got married there recently as well. Mega famous chapel. I just wanted to go there because I thought it would be really fascinating, and it was really fascinating. And I have no idea why people get married there. It was like proper spooky, wasn't it? Bad vibes.
Bad vibes. But the thing is, just to finish on that point, is that you can drive through with your car, get married, be done in like 10 minutes.
$50 as well.
$50. That's what I call the deal.
Well, you should totally have done that.
I know. Would you like fries with that type thing?
I think it would have been a real laugh, actually, because Steve always wanted to get married with Elvis, which would have been quite funny. But so
quick one. If you're interested in that, there is a place in Melbourne that actually does.
We found out there's a really cool place in Melbourne that do a sort of Vegas-style wedding with Elvis. What was it called? Do you remember?
I can't remember. Just look up Melbourne Vegas wedding.
Why don't we'll link it? We'll link it in the description as well, so you can have a look at that as well if you fancy it. Steve thinks he is like a modern day Elvis.
Since my baby left me. I've got that all going there.
Do you know what? When I first met you, Steve, that's all you sang was Elvis.
Oh yeah, I love Elvis.
I was like, what are you doing? Like,
Suspicious Minds. Like, it's just amazing. He's an amazing guy.
Anyway, so right. So just to let you know, originally, in my head, I thought organized wedding easy. What we'll do, I'll just go down to the local Westfield, pick out a dress, Steve hire a suit, we'll get married in the local registry office, which actually is in Brisbane, not in Sunshine Coast where we live. We're like, we'll just do that. We won't have anyone come, it'll just be the two of us. We'll make it really like not a big deal.
Super dupes low key.
Then we looked at the registry office in Brisbane and went, that's not really us. It's a very corporate building.
Here we go. And this was the start of it. It was like, not sure about the registry. That's where it all changed. It all deviated off this little rail of like, this will be easy and fast. Piece of paper, everyone's happy. No, this is where it all started. So please, continue.
Yeah. Well, I think you were the one who got it started because Steve was like, no, I want to get a celebrant. And I went, right, okay. So I found the whole process quite daunting to begin with because, I thought it was going to be really easy. And I realized very quickly that weddings can escalate in cost and in things to organize very, very, very fast.
Oh,
So, oh my God. So when we went to Italy back in April, like we'd only decided to go a few weeks before. As you can see, there's a bit of a pattern evolving here. We're very spontaneous last minute types.
spontaneity. Yeah, it's the spice of life.
We're always
really.
like that, aren't
Keeps things
we?
interesting.
So a few weeks before we went to Italy, we were like, oh, maybe we should get married there. How cool would that be? We'll get married on like the Amalfi Coast or something. And we looked into it, but then we found out, I think it must have been the marriage of intent form. You'd have to go to Rome, I think, to go and get the forms completed before you could do it over there. And we're like, yeah, okay, we actually do not have time to do all of that.
There was a process involved with that.
It would have been absolutely brilliant, though.
But
oh my God.
Ravello with the guys, guitars and everything. Oh, it would be
If you ever want to get married in Italy, oh my God, I wish we'd done it. Like we stayed in Amalfi, which is a town. Above that is a place called Ravello, which is up on the mountainside overlooking the coast. They have beautiful gardens there, and they do like a dawn concert in August with a whole classical orchestra. Oh my God, I would love that. And apparently if you get married there, they like take you through the town like on a procession. Like, oh, it looked amazing. But then also when we were in Amalfi, we got a boat over to Capri, and on the boat over, I was like, oh, and this would have been so cool just to like get on the boat, go to Capri for the day. And there were some gardens there as well, because Capri is absolutely beautiful. And it would have been like, I think that would have been such a beautiful way to have done it. Just us to get married in the gardens, get the boat back, have a nice dinner. Oh, I think that would have been just perfect. But
so preloaded with these kind of ideas, you kind of like,
what we want to do.
We want to do like the full Ravello thing and all that sort of stuff. So then you think, oh no, we'll just do this really simple thing. We'll just go down to the marriage registry and do it there.
We kind of always thought this would just be like the legalities, but I kind of knew that this is probably going to be our only wedding in a sense, which now looking back on it, I don't think I actually want to do that again because it was pretty full on.
Traumatic.
But what happened in the end is that we ended up just going, okay, well, we'll just do it here in Sunshine Coast. We were going to do it in Noosa, which is about a 40-minute drive from us. But Noosa's, if you've ever been, the traffic is crazy in Noosa. It's really hard to find parking. You also have to pay for a lot of, to get married on a lot of spots in Noosa by the beach, mind you. So we were like, do we actually want to pay to get married by a beach? But also the weather in Sunshine Coast and in Noosa is really temperamental. So we were like, if it rains, this is going to be rubbish to get married by the beach. So, and it actually did pour down on our day.
I was going to say, just like with I mean, that's a big point. But I think for me, the main thing is like the budget. And if a little hark back there to, house hunters. Anyway, so so really you think, oh, okay, look, I'll get a tux, Annie will get a dress, we'll get a celebrant. We'll be out of this for like, a couple of grand, no problem. Anyway, this thing is like in your head, you think you can do it. Like you think, oh, look, we'll keep it small. And then these little increments get added each time.
They do.
Sneaky little things.
So with the wedding dress thing, so that's what I was telling you about the Amalfi thing, because when we were talking about getting married in Amalfi, I went to a shop just in our local Westfield and I saw a dress and it was like $200. And I was like, bam, perfect. I'll just take that with me to Italy and just wear that and get married and it will be great. But obviously it didn't happen. So when we were planning this time, I said to everyone, I'll just go and buy that dress and then it'll be sorted and we don't have to worry about, going down that road of wedding dresses and stuff. So as soon as I bought that dress and I decided I was going to show Steve, what I wanted to wear, because I thought it was never going to be a traditional wedding. Like we were never going to spend the night apart before the wedding or anything like that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to show him like what he thinks. And you looked at it. What did you say?
Oh yeah, because she looked like she was a nurse, and I was like. It just wasn't a good look. And anyway, so that was a big mistake.
Big mistake.
Big no. Okay, just like as a tip from a bloke to another bloke, like never tell a girl she doesn't look amazing in her dress because it's just
But
not
you
a good
did
thing.
though. You said no, and I went. You do realise you've opened up a massive can of worms.
She caught me very off guard because I normally part of my brain to be awake to kind of pre-process that before my mouth started moving. So. But in this case, it's just like the truth came out straight away. So.
I'm kind of glad.
It wasn't intercepted like midstream. It was kind of like, oops. Oh, did I just say that?
Yeah. So I said to him, you've opened a massive can of worms. That for me was the biggest stress on ever, was trying to find a dress.
From that moment forward, Annie's life was about the dress. It was just dress focus.
It was awful. Actually, I have written up my sort of what the dresses look like that I did buy. I actually bought 6 dresses in the end. So I only went to one wedding shop and tried on a wedding dress there. And it was like a proper full on meringue style wedding dress. And I think I just wanted to try something like that on just to see what that feels like. Because as a woman, you grow up thinking, oh my God, on my wedding, I'm going to go and try on all these amazing dresses. And, what am I going to end up wearing? And you think about that, like that's ingrained in you from like a very early age.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and try on some wedding dresses as a sort of backup because I'd ordered quite a few online. When I went and tried on a dress, the woman at the shop went, online dresses, they never work out. She said, we always get the bridesmaids and the brides come in panicking, going, oh my God, the dress looks rubbish. Like, I've got to start again.
But of course, somebody in retail is going to say that, aren't they? That's what they're going to say.
Yeah,
like, they're going to give you the fear of like buying something online.
I didn't know that when you get a wedding dress, you literally have to have it all tailored to your body. So I was like, oh, right. Because the reason why I was panicking is because literally like 2 days after we decided to get married and we got the date set, my wedding store dream of dreams was having a huge sale, and they were getting rid of like a lot of their stock that they'd had there for like a couple of years before they were launching their brand new stock. And so I thought, oh, they're having a sale. Like they're probably going to put like $200 off their dresses, but it wasn't. It was massive. We're talking here wedding dresses that were like $8,000 down to $2,000, and I was like, oh my God.
I was going to buy them for an investment thing because I went,
oh my God, Steve, because when we originally got engaged, I started a Pinterest board and I started to try and have a look for wedding dresses, which I stopped after a while. But the one that kept popping up for me was a dress from the store, and the store is called Kaya Studios. It's an Australian-based designer. So the shop's called Kaya Studios. It's a luxury bridal sort of company. They do a bit more out of the box sort of designs, and they're quite modern. Kaya's about how is it? It's about KYHA. And yeah, so they had this massive sale on, and I was like, Steve, my dream dress is on sale. And it was like this big sequin number. And I was like, what do we do? I was like, it's $2,000. Do we get it or not? And I was like, I'm going to really regret it. And it was in my size. And I was like, I'm going to really regret it if I don't get it. But you can't send it back. So they weren't accepting any returns or anything like that. It's like, once you bought it, you bought it. And I was like, oh, okay. Our wedding that we were going to have, that was literally going to be me getting a $200 dress. Is now a $2,000 dress that I can't return. Am I going a bit mad here? And so in the end, I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the dress. And
my eyes just rolled. My eyes glazed
Steve
over.
was not happy with me at all.
My eyes glazed over. I thought, here we go. Here was something that was just going to be a nice little, kind of walk down the park. It was just growing exponentially.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, it was just like, oh, great. Okay.
But one of the reasons why I bought it is because so the first shop, I actually went to another shop as well to try on dresses. Because originally I thought, well, if men can hire a tux for their weddings, then why can't women hire a wedding dress? And then I found a wedding dress hire boutique in Brisbane. That's how luxury sort of, secondhand bridal gowns, but also you can hire them as well. So I went and tried on a few there. So I messaged the woman from the shop. It's called Bassett in Brisbane. And I messaged the woman from the shop and I was like, oh, I've just purchased this dress. If it doesn't fit, can you resell it? And she went, yeah, fine. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make my money back. So that's fine. But also I found another site online called stillwhite.com, and they do basically secondhand wedding dresses. So people can sell their wedding dresses, whether they're worn or not, on the site, and they sell them all around the world. And so,
business idea there. If you're interested, you can probably do the same thing with a tuxedo. Like, I reckon there's a bit of a business in there for
there probably is
tuxedo. Yeah, maybe there is.
And so I looked on that site quite a lot to see if I could find like the same wedding dress that I bought. And then I saw people selling it for so I bought it for $2,000. People were selling it for like $3,000. So I was like, oh, maybe we can make some money out of this. So I thought it will be okay. It'll be okay. And so when it did arrive, it didn't suit me in the slightest.
No.
And so we were like, okay, that's fine. We'll just put it up on that site and resell it. And we resold it like literally 2 weeks after we put it up on that site. And bear in mind, I bought it for $2,000 and we sold it for 3,700. So we actually made
Cha-ching.
money.
So that was good. And like I was very skeptical about it. Like as you can imagine, as a guy, like I wouldn't dream of doing that myself. But
it's a risky move, but it paid off. And now I'm like, oh, maybe we should just like invest in wedding dresses and resell them.
When that sale went through and like she was happy at the other end, I was like, oh, part of me was like, I should just buy a truckload of those, could have made a fortune. And that's the thing. And you just, you could have doubled your money on each of those, I think.
But you had to be kind of careful. Like the reason why I decided not to wear it is because it needed some work doing to it. Like it was way too long, like stupidly too long. Even a model would find it too long. So they would have had to taken it up. And I thought if I start altering it to wear it literally for 15-minute photo shoot before I'd probably get changed again, I was like, it's just going to devalue. So I thought, actually, I'm just not going to wear it. So in the end, I ordered 3 dresses from Needle and Thread, which is a UK-based bridal company. And they're not like big bridal gowns. They're more like they're more like dresses you could probably wear to other events, which is kind of what I wanted. And I found a dress in the end from that company. It arrived a week before the wedding. And the main thing I wanted more than anything, which is why I made it such a nightmare for myself, is I wanted to wear my mum's veil. So when my mum passed away 12 years ago, I found her suitcase, and inside it literally had her wedding dress, the shoes, it had a wedding list in there that she'd saved, and 2 champagne corks and the veil. And so I kept it. And I always sort of wanted to wear her veil as like a sort of tribute to her. And it's really beautiful. It's from the 60s. And it had like a little Alice band on it. It was so beautiful. And so I wanted to find something that was going to go with that. And so luckily I found a dress. It wasn't my dress of dreams. I don't really know what my dress of dreams would have looked like.
I thought it looked pretty good. I think it looked really, yeah, I think it looked super pretty. Actually.
I don't even know what my wedding dress of dreams would have looked like. I do know that I could have easily spent like probably 6 months looking for a dress.
Well, look, that kind of echoes the whole thing about getting married. It's always something you're thinking, oh, maybe could have done that a bit better. And I think, you could do that with everything, really. You got to kind of draw a line in the sand somewhere and go, well, look, there's not a $30,000 budget for this wedding. So,
Well, that's the thing. It just mounts up and up.
Yeah. And like before you know it, you're spending more money on shoes. I'll get a nice belt. And then you're like, what are we going to do for drinks and stuff? There's a whole episode around that because I went bananas with that. I was like, what are people going to do? Are we taking photos? They're going to have, a beer. Like that's just not on if they're not.
We only had a photographer for 45 minutes, which wasn't long enough. And something we really regret. I wish we'd actually invested in a decent photographer because ours she wasn't our celebrant's first choice. And you could really tell because we didn't even get a basic photo of the both of us with your mum. No. Like you got one with her and I got one.
I feel like my mates took better pictures during the wedding. They did.
Your friend did take
way better pictures. So that was super disappointing. Like, vet your photographers in a big way. Don't just pick anyone and go, they'll do.
Think about what photos you want because we didn't really think about that, which is kind of annoying. But so originally it was just going to be the 2 of us. Then Steve wanted to invite his mate and his mate's wife and child. So I was like, well, if you're inviting your mate, then I'm going to invite my best friend.
Well,
and then
because we had to have someone as a witness.
But I was like, we'll just pull them off the street.
Yeah, just pull some random guy. Go, you'll do. Like, sorry, man, I'm on the way to like, to a restaurant or something. Are you going to pull me in and just go, you can stand here for half an hour. We do our thing, right? So that felt really weird. I wasn't cool with that. I was like, look, let's just get my mates up. They, give them a nice weekend and that sort of thing. And
once we decided we were going to invite a mate each to come to the wedding, then I was like, okay, we really need to invite your mum to the wedding.
Yes.
And Steve wanted to keep it as like stress-free as possible.
So like now it started out, and then as soon as you start on that first layer of the onion of your family, it's like, how many layers deep in this onion are we going to go? So
we just decided on your mum and your mum's sister and her partner, and then that was it, wasn't it? We didn't invite any of your cousins, nothing, because we were like, we just don't want this to start to snowball into something bigger than what it actually already is becoming. And so we were like, fine, let's just keep it as chilled as possible. And that's what we did. And then we ended up having lunch at our favorite restaurant in Sunshine Coast as well, which we managed to get into. And it's really, really hard to get into that place, especially when you call them up a month before and ask for like a table of 8 people. So we were super lucky to get in there. But one thing I do...
It's called Spirit House, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, Spirit House. But one thing I do regret about that is that we turned up late and I didn't realize that we'd booked a table for the last seating time of the day. And we turned, like, by the time we ordered, we were like an hour late.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
they were stressing hard at us that, like,
Yeah.
you're really late. You can only have like a certain amount of courses now.
Oh, so that kind of limited our
That
course
stressed me
selection.
and Steve out. So we
Yeah.
were panicking the whole time, going, "Oh my God, everyone eat up," because, like, you know, we could feel the tension in the air. So that was quite disappointing that we had that. And actually, even the next day, I remember having a bit of a cry to you, going, "Oh, I made us late and I ruined the wedding."
In your head, you've got this whole vision of you know, having your kind of massive wedding and kind of the meal of dreams and loads of like champagne popping everywhere and people just giggling and laughing, having a fantastic time.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the end, it turns out you have quite just a normal, regular type dinner and people are still laughing and having fun.
We didn't even have any champagne at our lunch because we were like too worried about being too late.
Yeah, that's it. And we were like, oh, well, you know, by the time we were too worried about what everyone else was thinking to enjoy the day ourselves. So it kind of really wasn't, you know, one of those moments where you sort of say, oh, cool, and look back with this really amazing memory. It was,
yeah. But you know what, though? I mean, so just to let you know what we actually paid for in the end. So we had the wedding dress. We actually ended up buying Steve a tux. We didn't rent one. We decided to buy it.
It was only an extra like $200 and you get to buy one.
We kind of regret that. I wish we'd actually gone to a bit more effort with your tux and actually got you like a really decent one.
I know. It was kind of one of the things where like they purposefully aim it at you at the store because they're like, oh, well, it's $200 more. But you know, like that tux is not like excellent by any means. It was there, but it was on sale. I was like,
we're like, well, whatever. Like, how many times are you going to wear a tux?
Yeah, maybe like once every 20 years, you know. But at the time, you're making all these excuses. Go, oh, of course, like, yeah, I'll have a tux to wear and it'll be there and all that sort of stuff. Then the sales staff are totally loving you because they're like, oh, think of all the times you're going to wear that tux. It's going to be amazing. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Okay. So anyway, look, I fell for it as a sucker. I was like, okay, let's do this thing. So yeah, next thing I know, like I've got a tux. I'm probably never going to wear again. So
then we had the celebrant and photographer as well. We paid for the reception lunch. I got some flowers. I scored on the flowers. I found like some account on Instagram, asked them to make a bunch of flowers and they were so beautiful. I was so pleased with them. And they were looked like they were picked from a garden, had daisies and lily of the valley, which was my mum's favorite. Oh, they were beautiful. And then we had, and then I found someone from Facebook. I went onto the Sunshine Coast Community Board Facebook group, found someone to do my makeup, which I absolutely loved. I loved my makeup. My friend got hers done as well. And after she was like, I look like a tranny. So she wasn't too pleased with hers, but I thought mine was insane. It stayed on the entire day and night. It was amazing. I also got a spray tan as well. Probably not really needed, but it made me feel really good. I forgot how good spray tans are.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something with me. I don't know. I'm just not. As soon as I just equate spray tanners with like Bondi. So
what did you say? Steve said that he was like, Annie, you look like being put in an oven.
You look like you've been put in for basting. Yeah, you know when you baste like you put a potato in the oven and it kind of goes a bit brown and crispy. It looks like that. Like let's put you in the oven for a bit.
And you said it smelled like soy sauce.
Yeah, it honestly smells like soy sauce. I can't think of any reason why someone in their right mind would go and get a spray tan. Like why? You smell like soy sauce.
Because
who's going to want to go near you? No one. You just smell like a soy sauce dish. Great. Is that pad see ew, pad thai? Here's some noodles. Like, go for your life. You know, just stay away from the spray tan. Put it down. Don't touch it.
But the thing that I forgot, because like back in my day when I was like a student, you know, the Saint Tropez would come out for everyone like back at the sort of, you know,
what's the Saint Tropez? Back it up for us people who aren't, you know, kind of in the Saint Tropez. No.
The Saint Tropez tan, the tan like mousse. Oh my God. I was like obsessed with that stuff when I was like 18 to 21 or something.
So it was like in a can.
Yeah, it was like a mousse you'd put on. Always have to watch your hands though, because then the backs of your hands would always turn orange.
Well, yeah, and that's why I saw the girls. They'd go out to the nightclub and they'd be like looking like they've been in the oven for too long and with yellow hands. It's like, how is that attractive? And then they'd like, you know, okay, look, you know, when you're younger,
tanning's got way better though.
You're kind of thinking, well, if I get lucky and kind of end up with someone's in someone's room and kind of end up putting spray tan everywhere. You know, like how would that
There
come
you go.
across?
Yeah, I know.
Not
Gross.
so well.
Spray tan's
Not
got
so
way
well.
better. Anyway, when I went to get first time I've ever got a spray tan for the wedding, and I went and did it like a week before just to test it out. And it was like, you know, the episode in Friends when Ross goes in to get a spray tan and you have to change directions, but he doesn't change direction. He ends up getting like 4 times on his front, and his whole front is like orange, and then the rest of him is not tanned. It was a similar sort of setup to what and when the girl was showing me what to do, and I went, oh my God, this is like that episode from Friends. And she was like, what? Like, obviously didn't know what I was talking about. But
Friends, what's that?
I was like, oh no, I'm going to mess this up. But actually, as soon as I got spray tan, I felt amazing. I mean, I know I stank for like the first day, but after that, I was like, I have so much confidence. I don't know what it does to you, but it really made me feel really confident.
Maybe it's the soy sauce seeping into the brain.
I don't know. It was great though. I loved it. But I realised I do not have the sort of time and maintenance to keep that up. And I got my nails done as well. And oh my God, I've never had my nails done.
Don't encourage the other half to get a nails done.
God.
Can you open this? My nails are like
couldn't
too
do
long.
anything.
It was just, no, bad idea.
I couldn't do anything. I've only had my nails done once before, and they had to come off within a few weeks. I think they were really painful. This time, the girl, she nailed, no pun intended, what I wanted. I wanted a French manicure, never had it done before. And it looked beautiful, but it really stressed me out, especially on the wedding day when I was like trying to do things quickly and I couldn't do it because of my nails. I didn't realize how much you actually use your nails in general.
You do. You use your nails.
Weird.
More than you know.
And then the last thing we spent money on was the wedding rings as well, which we spent probably what my ring designer said is we probably spent a bit more money on my ring than what a lot of people do. And the reason we spend a bit more money on my wedding ring is because I'm wearing it forever, whereas the wedding day isn't something that's going to last forever. It's just a day. So I wanted to make sure I actually spent money on the ring itself. So I'm just going to tell you how much that cost in total, which was we ended up spending what we thought was going to be, let's go down to the registry office and I wear a $200 dress, was $8,500.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, we made $1,700 on that wedding dress. So it actually brought down to just under $7,000, which is pretty good. Considering our quick wedding ended up being $7,000. But I just want to talk a bit more about what that wedding day was actually like, because I feel like people don't really discuss their wedding days in detail. People just say, oh, it's the best day of my life. And, that was it. And I talked to a best friend in England who I've actually missed her wedding. I've missed actually all of my friends' weddings because I've been over here in Australia. And that was at a time when they all started getting married. I talked to my best friend about it and I was like, what was your wedding like? And she went, oh my God, it's so stressful. She was like, I'd never have a big wedding again. And I hear people say that quite a lot, that, I would have much preferred to do an elopement. We had 6 people at our wedding and I'm like,
which technically is an elopement actually.
Yeah, but it was, maybe it's just because we organised it in a month, which is obviously not ideal. And I think I would have spent way more time preparing for it. Like, little things like just like, what do I really want my wedding ring to look like? What do I want my flowers to look like? All these sort of things that feel so important. And there's so much pressure on yourself to get it right because you're like, I have to get this right. This is my wedding day. Like same with the dress. You feel like there's just such a huge amount of pressure on you to have this most perfect day. Whereas in actual fact, I know like it's your wedding day, but at the end of the day, it is just a day. And it goes by so fast. But that at the end, like I remember when we got back in the evening, because we went out for dinner and we came back to our house. We didn't stay anywhere overnight. And it was just the 2 of us and we sat on a sofa. And then I said to Steve, I went, oh, we didn't ever get to dance to a song because obviously it wasn't like a proper wedding. And so we just put our favourite song on and we danced in the living room. And that was one of my favourite moments of the entire day. It was nice. So gorgeous. But, there were lots of things that didn't go right. Like we actually had an argument before we got in the car to drive ourselves to our wedding. Like Steve was wanting me to help him do his shoelaces up. I was like, I can't do anything with my nails.
Stupidly, the way I put the tux on, I was like, can you just do it quickly? Tux is all ready to go and you were creased and... So that would cause a bit of, friction at the start.
I was like,
in a good way.
I was like, I can't help you. I'm trying to get myself ready.
And he was like peaking. She was not happy.
Not happy.
Not in a happy
And then
place.
Steve decided on the morning of the wedding, he was like, I need to go and buy drinks for everyone to keep them entertained while we have a photographer for 30 minutes to take some photos of
We
us.
can't sit them out. You can't have them there all parched. That's just not on. So, no, let me finish. So silly me decided to rush out at the last minute. I had to buy an esky. So I had to go down to, here's me rocking
How
into
much you spend on all
the
those
BC.
drinks?
Yeah, I don't want to think about it.
Oh
so
my
anyway,
God.
so I thought, okay, well, we'll get drinks. And I had to make sure I got different drinks for everyone because I knew, make sure everyone's covered and a bit of champagne, blah, blah, blah. So by the time of that, got the ice and everything, came back and I'm like, wiped the sweat away, after all that. And it was kind of like, you know what I did? I forgot to bring the bottle opener with me. Rookie error, not a good thing. So here's me, like carrying the esky down. I got there, like wedding's about to start. I'm like, oh no, I didn't bring the bottle opener. What's everyone going to do? So here's an esky full of beers and stuff. And
I know, but it wasn't just full of beers. We had 6 people there. One of them I know definitely wasn't drinking. And you put in there like
there was all
20
sorts.
beers, 3 bottles of wine, 3 bottles of champagne. I was like, what are you doing, Steve? Like, we're literally going to be there for like an hour tops before we've got to go to the restaurant. But so you were stressing about that when we got there. So if you see our wedding photos, Steve is absolutely drenched in them because he was going back and forwards to the car to go and get all of his stuff for this whole drinks thing.
And then I spent ages like running into the nearby restaurant to try and see if they had a bottle opener.
God.
I was waiting in this big long queue and
it was. Didn't know that. You never told me that.
Yeah, well, that was what took most of the time. Anyway, and everyone else is like, what's Steve
going
doing?
on?
He's
And we
running
were, like,
around
standing
like in the
there.
rain. What's going on here?
We were like standing there going, the photographer's here. We need to get moved.
And the next thing I know, like, are you ready to take photos? And I'm completely drenched. I'm like that stage. And I'm like, it's like a drowned rat.
And you ended up having like your phone and your wallet all in your bulging pockets. Like the photos.
I don't know.
Like,
it wasn't my gig.
and then
the
my
whole wedding photo
shoes,
thing.
like I was trying to find shoes for like I stressed about trying to find the perfect pair of shoes a week before the wedding.
I've seen these wedding photographers in action. I've been to other weddings that are a little more upmarket than ours was. And like, no, the photographers guide you. They say, oh, look, take that out of your pocket. Stand like this.
Yeah,
And
she didn't tell anything.
none of that. Zero of that. And look, I was a bit bummed because I thought we paid a pretty fair price for what she did. And I don't think we kind of got the value we should have out of that. So we were both a bit disappointed.
Yeah.
So, there was that aspect as well. And I don't know. Next thing, just make sure you take your bits. Make sure your shirt's tucked in and your bits and pieces are out of your pockets. I think 2 big tips right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, like we drove ourselves to the wedding. We didn't stay overnight anywhere. I didn't even walk down the aisle, which I do regret. I wish I'd done that now, like actually walk down the aisle. We were kind of deciding like on the morning what song should be our song like for the thing. And we didn't do it in the end because it was pouring with rain. So it was like, is there any point? And I didn't even mention this, but we got married in a rainforest, which was actually quite good being in the rain. If you've been in the rain in a rainforest, the trees do protect you a bit, but we still get like pulled on, didn't we?
Oh, we had a little rotunda we did it under. So it was nice, but yeah, it wasn't ideal. So
yeah. And then, at the end of the day, what's the most memorable thing about it? Because even though we're not shining a very good light on our wedding here, even now we're like, yeah, our wedding wasn't amazing, was it? Let's face it. But what the best thing about our wedding by far and the most memorable part is the connection between us. Like it was absolutely amazing. So bear in mind, you've got us arguing before we go into the ceremony. Steve stressing about getting drinks for people who don't really drink. And then
there's probably about 4 beers taken out of the esky while I was there, maybe, if that,
maybe 1.
And then someone got really tactical. One of my mates pretty tactical with the beer thing. So he was off opening beers on the fence rail and stuff like that. So.
But we've got all that going on. We had a couple of photos before the ceremony. And so, because we got married in the rainforest, it was a bit of a boardwalk to walk down, which was really not a great idea wearing my shoes because my heels kept getting trapped in between the slots of the boardwalk. So that really stressed me out. And I felt very time conscious. And that's the thing about doing an elopement wedding is that you're paying for a short amount of time to do the service. So we literally had 15 minutes for the service with the celebrant. We had 45 minutes with the photographer. So it was meant to be like 15 minutes, I think, before the ceremony, and then 15 minutes of the ceremony, and then another 15 minutes after. So when you're sort of surrounded by this really short amount of time, it's like, we just got to do this as quickly as we can. And so when we actually went to get married, we had to get married under a rotunda. And the celebrant was like, do you want to walk down the yard? And I was like, no, let's just do it. And we were like, right, come on, Steve, we're doing it. And we're like, oh my God, we're actually doing it.
Yeah, she goes, oh, like everyone's just standing around looking at each other, was having a bit of a chat, and they go, do you want to get married? Oh, let's do it then.
Okay.
And it's this kind of a weird moment when
you're like, whoa.
That kind of wasn't how I imagined it would work. And then all of a sudden you're just standing on the mat and they go, oh, do you want to say your vows? And
we're like, but you know what it was like? So we had this sort of like round jute rug that we had to stand on to do the ceremony. And as soon as I stood on that jute rug, this huge like wave of emotion came over me and I was not prepared for it in the slightest. And I just looked at Steve and I was like, oh my God, like we're actually we're actually getting married. Like we're actually doing this. And
he looked like, she was freaking out about, when someone's about to go over the dip on a roller coaster, she looked a bit like that.
The photos that came back.
She was like, oh my God, we're going to go over the edge. Ah! It was kind of like that sort of look.
The photos that came back from the photographer, the look of me crying. I'm not in a good crying way. I was like, yeah, great. I'm never going to like use these photos. But it was really beautiful. And it was at this moment where we felt so connected with each other. And we both said this afterwards, like it felt like there was no one else in the room, like anywhere around us. It was just us two together. And I've only felt that once before, which was when you proposed to me. And I could hear like when you proposed to me, I remember hearing like people like applauding us. But I didn't think it was for us. I thought it was something else. And I was like, oh, that's for us. But this time when we got married, it felt like it was that, but times 100. And I was like, wow. And I don't know if many people have ever talked about this, but there was something about getting married, especially as we've been together 11 years. Like we are literally like an old married couple. we literally are. Yeah. And so in that moment of getting married, it was like, I felt this huge, like it was like electricity or something, like this huge energy around us. And it felt so amazing. And that continued the whole day. So the whole day, I just didn't want to be apart from you. I kept like touching you, like, oh, like, the love between us was so huge. To me, that is by far the most memorable part of the entire day. It was really nice. And it kind of felt like, we had this connection that was a lot deeper than what we had before. And it was kind of, it's really, I mean, it sounds a bit cliched, but that's kind of how it is. And, I don't think you can really kind of describe it. It's just kind of, well, it should be just a piece of paper and away you go. In your mind, that's what you're thinking. Well, at least I did anyway. Piece of paper, let's move along. Yeah, that's right.
Legal thing, done and dusted. But no, there was more to it than that. There was kind of this deeper thing and I wasn't kind of expecting. And then, you just feel really connected. And I think that's
super connected.
That's a really, really cool part.
And that's continued on like now. So we are, what's the date now? We're like 6 weeks, I think, since we got married. Very newly married couple. But yeah, like, even now, like after we got like the next day to Melbourne, we were going, oh my God, we're husband and wife. Like, what? Yeah. We're like, wow, this is so
And then I was like getting excited about, hey, wifey.
You were so sweet. Because the next day we decided, we were like, we won't spend the night away on our wedding night. Let's do it the day after. So the day after we decided we were going to go to Noosa for the weekend. But it rained the whole weekend. So it was a bit like, it wasn't quite what we were hoping Noosa was going to be like for the weekend. But we actually stayed in an Airbnb that night, even though we don't really do Airbnbs anymore. But when we got to see it was so sweet because on the way there, Steve was like, oh, I can't wait to say like my wife to introduce you to for the first time. And as soon as we got to the Airbnb, Steve was like, this is my wife. And like,
my wife, 20 camels. Maybe 15 camels.
It was so sweet. And and so we've just spent the whole time since going, oh my God, you're my husband. And he's like, you're my wife. And like, we're like, wow, that's so mad. Like we actually
low price 10 camels.
We actually did it. But as I was saying, like it has really brought us way closer together. I don't know what it is, whether it's like the sort of like, especially for me, feeling more settled now, because when I met Steve, I was only meant to be away for 6 months. It's been 11 years. I was only meant to be backpacking around the world for 6 months. That was it. So maybe, I don't know what it is. Maybe for me, it's a real sense of sort of just grounded.
It was lovely.
Like
it was really nice.
Groundedness or something like
grounded.
Grounded. Yeah. But it's quite interesting with getting married, especially as an expat, because there are lots of questions that you might be asking yourself before marrying someone from another country. And that could include, where are we going to end up living? I know lots of couples who've been through this, some who have got married and they married like who are British, who married an Australian, and they didn't really have that conversation before because they just kind of assumed that, we'll end up living back in my country as well at some point. And later on down the track, they found out actually, the other half didn't want to leave Australia. And so then that becomes a really, really awkward conversation, especially after you've got married, when you start to go, okay, well, our future's not quite how I imagined it to be. So, and then another person I know, they ended up, they were with an Australian for a long time. They got engaged. They also had gut problems like what I've had, but she only had in Australia. And so they wanted to move back to England because they were like, I don't want to be in gut pain anymore. And the other half, even though they're engaged, was like, well, I'm not coming with you. I want to stay in Australia. And so they obviously ended up breaking up in the end. But I think this is a sort of question that needs to be sort of talked about a bit more in terms of, really having that discussion of what is it that you want your future to look like? Because, we had a big conversation before we got married about the children thing, because for me, having children was something I have always wanted to do. I grew up in a big family. I've got like 5 brothers I've got 4 brothers and 1 sister, but, I come from a massive family and I've always wanted to have a big family, but I've realized now that isn't really going to happen. But for Steve, having children wasn't as a big deal to you as it was for me. So these were conversations that we really had to have before we sort of made that big commitment to each other.
Yeah, I think it's like you really need to uncover what it is that your kind of end goal or your end game, or kind of what you even see along the way. I just uncover all these bits, because I think what happens, and maybe you aren't even clear with that with yourself. So I think you kind of need to be, first of all, I think the first step is to figure out kind of what you want. And that's the second step, I guess, is to have that conversation once you've decided what that is to kind of get with the other half before probably you tie the knot, and then sort of go, well, hey, what do you want? And then maybe let's find a way we can make everything work. So, because quite often I don't think everything's going to align perfectly. There's probably going to have to be compromises, and great relationships are all about compromise, right? So, and then making those things fit together in the best way that they can. So where everyone wins, and then with that combination, you both become better. So I guess that's the end goal, I think, anyway.
And as you said to me before, it's like, it might sound a bit cliched, but you are essentially a team and you have to work together as a team as well. Rather than being, well, this is what I want to do, or this is what, I want to do. It's like, you got to sort of have that compromise with each other as well. But, I'm super lucky with Steve when it comes to where we're living, because we both love travel more than anything. So for us, it's an exciting opportunity to go and live in other places, if that's what we wanted. And at the moment, obviously we're happy living in Australia, but I know that you wouldn't be fussed if I was like, let's go and live back in England. You'd be like, yeah, great, let's go and do it. I mean, our problem is we've got a doggy now. So, and Steve knows how much I freak out at the thought of putting in the hold, my poor doggy.
Oh, Annie is like absolutely obsessed with our little cavoodle.
You're obsessed with our doggy too.
She's great, but look, I'd put her in a hold. No problem. She's coming with us, like that's fine. And look, look, I know it's not going to be a pleasant experience. I know it's probably not something I want to repeat 20 times, but I think, if you got to move, you got to move.
I think if you're moving your doggy, though, it's got to be a permanent move. It's not like, let's go move our doggy here for a year and then move our doggy somewhere else, because our dog's a bit vulnerable. She's feisty, but vulnerable.
Oh my gosh. This one is like pampers.
I do.
Pampers our little doggy so much.
Take a little doggy water bottle when we take her out for a run on the beach, and no one else does it, because lots of people's dogs, they end up going into the ocean to drink the water and then they get really sick. Whereas I'm like, I always give our dog some water after she's had a run around. I'm like, come on, have a drink.
Yeah. I mean, that you're showing like a nice part there. That to me just sounds like normal. But I mean, when you do it, you get like, super fussed. Oh, is she all right? Like she was licking a paw the other day. And
it's
like,
really red though.
Oh my gosh, her paw, she's got something in it. Oh, and she's freaking out. I'm like, Annie, she's just licking a paw. And I've looked at her and said, you all right, Miles? She looked at me and just looked normal. And I was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong. So,
but you know what really annoys me though?
What annoys
is that she loves you more than me.
Oh,
she's obsessed with Steve.
No,
and I'm
she's
like,
not.
She is. And I'm like, I don't understand why. I'm the one who feeds her, and like I give her all the attention and play fetch with her all the time, play games. And like Steve's just like, stop tomato, stop tamale. Like, anyways, we're digressing.
We are digressing.
But so just wanted to quickly talk about a bit about our honeymoon as well. Well, we call it our mini moon because you know what Steve and I are like. We try and scrimp and save on our wedding so we can have 2 honeymoons.
Well, so we had a mini moon, and that was kind of just a
We call it a mini moon.
little getaway. We're having a proper getaway at the end of this year.
Yeah, so our mini moon, which was also celebrating my 40th as well, which I really didn't want to sort of come to terms with. That was turning 40 because it's a bit like the wedding thing. You grow up with all these sort of expectations drilled into you by society that you're meant to achieve all these certain goals by the time you hit certain ages.
I just want to pull up on that point because that's a very interesting point. And I think getting married is kind of a good time to reflect on this, is that these things, i.e. getting married, is one of those things you've seen culturally since you were young. And you've grown up with it and you've kind of got used to it and you've got this image in your mind of how things should be. Well, I think take the wedding away and put something else in there. Like what else have you, and try and uncover other things that you've perhaps been culturally molded into.
Yeah.
And maybe think about that. Like, hang on a sec.
There must be so many
Why am I doing this
things.
for? And I think it's a nice moment to pause and have a bit of think about why are we doing all this stuff? Like, why do we do anything?
Even with work.
Yeah.
Like I've only we both got new jobs this year and I really love my new job, but it's like, I finally realized, why am I doing this job? Like, because I actually really love it. And I haven't ever, like before it's like, just get an office job or make some money or, you got to like properly think about it.
I love what I do as well. I think it's great. And I think, we both really love what we're doing and that's amazing. And I think, that there's so many aspects though that we've grown up with in life where I'm trying to think of another example. Maybe,
like, but by the time you hit 40, you're supposed to have like children who are like teenagers by this point, or you're meant to have like a massive family home and a big swanky car.
That's right.
It's that sort of status that you're supposed to be successful and what other people deem as successful by that age.
So basically what is successful for society is kind of what you've seen impressions of as you've grown up over the ages, and and that thing is almost, burned into your mind. So if your life doesn't work out quite the same as the TV and movies that you watch, it's like, it's kind of a bit stressful. You think, I should be here doing this at this time. And I don't think we really need to live like that though. I don't think it needs to be.
It's a funny one because, especially when as I can't have children, I spent like the last few years thinking, oh my God, I feel so ashamed of myself that I can't have children. People are going to judge me and stuff. And it's funny, like, especially since getting married and turning 40, I'm like, I don't actually care anymore.
No.
It's something weird that's just totally changed in me. And I'm like, I don't care. And when people do ask me, I bluntly say, I can't have children. And then they go, huh. Okay, like, like when you go to Coles and they're like, are you collecting those points for children? And I'm like, no, I can't have children. And they go, all right. So I'm like, okay. But it's like, I find like it's an easy way to just shut that conversation down. Not like I have to explain myself, but I kind of find it funny. I do actually kind of find it funny in a way just to see their reaction. But
I mean, wouldn't it be boring if we were just all did the same thing? We all ended up, by the time we're 30, we did this, 24. I mean, come on. There'd be no variety in the world. It's just like going to an ice cream shop with one flavor. I mean, why would you do that for?
Why?
So live a little, get out there. I mean, break the stereotypes. Life isn't a straight line. It's full of squiggles and turns, and no one's going to have exactly the same kind of path. And I think the more you can be happy with that, the happier life's going to be. So I really think Stevo's advice for the day: just be happy.
Just be. Oh, there's that talkie there. Just be happy. Exactly.
Tamale was,
and I think that's the thing. Like turning 40s made me realize, well, I have to say it also, from having menopause, one of the symptoms is a bad anxiety, which is what I've had since having it. It's one symptom that I haven't been able to get rid of. But I'm like, why am I I don't even know why I'm anxious about nothing. And then it's like realizing all these things don't really matter. And it's like your happiness does. And yesterday I went to like a breath work event that I literally saw on Instagram the night before. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to it. I'm going to stop making excuses for not going to things. And so I was like, I'm going to go to it. And I turned up to it and it was brilliant, but it was like totally out of my comfort zone where, at the end of the session, they're like, come on guys, let's all stand up and like start moving your body in whichever way you want to express yourself. And I was like, what? Like that's not, give me like a couple bottles of wine and I'll do that. But like, there's no way I'm doing it at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I'm going to get into it. Yeah, who cares, honey? Like, get into it. And then they were like, okay, let's sort of form a big circle now. And it was like, okay, yeah, cool. We're having a dance. And then one of the main guys comes out into the middle and starts dancing. He's like, okay, yeah, everybody express yourself. Well, let's find someone. The next person's going to take over to get everyone dancing. And who do they go to? Out of about 100 people, me.
Nanny Buns.
And I was like, oh, no. Before I knew it, he grabbed my hand and he pulled me straight into the middle of the circle. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And I'm so glad you weren't there, Steve, because I would have died, I think, if you were there.
Oh, I wish they'd pull. I would have done it. If like
you would have done it. I think I would have been like, no, go to Steve.
I would have like done some crazy dance you could not replicate and just see people struggle with it. That would be what I would like to do.
And that's the difference with me and Steve. Like, Steve's very like, you know, if you go to an event and they're like, has anyone got any questions? He'll put his hand up no matter how big the audience is. He doesn't care. You'll do it. For me, I couldn't think of anything more worse. I'm always like, Steve, you ask a question.
I've got to be interested in it though. If I go somewhere, I'm not fussed about what they're talking about. But when I'm genuinely interested, I don't care if there's like one person or a million. It doesn't bother me. No.
But anyway, so they pulled me into the middle of the crowd and they're like, yeah, express yourself. You know, this is your way to show what sort of year you've had of 2022. And I was like, actually, I've had a really good year. And this is not something I can say that's happened every year. Like, this year has been probably one of the best years I've had for a very, very long time. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I started doing almost like gym, like workout stuff. I don't know what I was doing. But the fact is that I felt really liberated from it. And it felt very freeing. And I was like, no one actually cares. No one's looking at you because they're too worried about everyone else looking at them. So it's like the stupid cycle that we have ingrained in our heads that we're like worried about what other people think, thinking that no one is thinking the same thing.
Yeah. You like, watching everyone's thinking, oh, look at that person. Oh, that's a silly dance there. And it's like, then people aren't doing that.
Especially with the Instagram culture.
Look all right.
Especially Instagram culture. Everyone's way too concerned about how they're being perceived. But yeah, so it was really exciting just to actually finally have a good end to the year. And the reason why I think that is because each year we end the year going, well, that was a bit rubbish. Next year's going to be every year I could see it's going to be a really good year next year. I know it. I've got a really good feeling. And Steve goes, yeah, whatever, Annie. And then we end the year the same thing. So this year I didn't say that. And all I said to Steve was, I feel like this year is going to be a year of growth. That's what I kind of think our word is for the year. It's going to be growth. Like both going to grow quite a lot. And I feel like we actually did. Like both of us, like individually and together as a couple, which is amazing. Like when I think about stuff we've achieved, especially being able to go abroad again, like going to Italy and Greece, and then starting a new job, starting this podcast. I'm about to get citizenship finally. I'm waiting for the date to come through, which I'm really hoping is going to be Australia Day because that would be amazing. And applying for adoption. And gosh, what else have we done? Got married, obviously. We got married, nearly forgot that one. Yeah, super good. So I think if you've had a crappy year and you're like, oh God, what's next year going to involve? Like, I probably wouldn't even put too much pressure on it and just maybe think of one thing you want to achieve and then, maybe it might happen. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think the best tactics that I feel work for me are kind of make a bunch of plans and say, okay, this is the way it goes. But if I don't get there, well, I'm not going to be upset and put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm just going to work to that plan the best I can and see what the universe, I don't like that term, the universe, because it feels a bit woo-woo. But for me, like, it's kind of in a way it kind of is true because, you just have to let everything breathe. And if, you can just make a plan, stick to it and just do it. And if it happens, it happens. It doesn't, it doesn't. You had a crack at it, right?
So after our wedding and honeymoon and celebrating my 40th, we actually came back home to getting a really bad case of COVID, didn't we? It was awful.
Oh, it's terrible. Look, we really got hit by COVID. It really took us out, and we just felt really exhausted after we had the initial symptoms. So we're getting better. It's taking a little bit longer than we expected, but we're just getting started. We literally are. We're going to make this thing huge. We want to get loads of people involved, start interviewing everybody. That's the plan. Literally, it's going to explode. We want to make this big. We want to get everyone involved and make it exciting, energetic, and really cool. And I think there's so much to explore in the world of being an expat in Australia, but in loads of different ways. I think you can really dive deep and bring those things to the surface. There's loads of questions people have been asking us.
Absolutely. So in the coming weeks, we're going to have more guests on the show. I can't wait to share them with you. And I hope you stay tuned and listen out for our next podcast episode coming soon.
Yes, stay tuned. And until next time, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.